The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show.
A presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app.
Download now for free.
Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
Well, no shortage of things to talk about as, yes, we've been all over the quarterback change at Tennessee heading into the Citrus Bowl. Bye-bye, Joe. Hello, Nico. And it's hard to find a second biggest story to that, Caleb, as that's been what everybody wants to talk about. Everybody wants to see the kid and what he can do. And I think he's going to play really well. Other people, they have question marks. They're not sure that he's big enough yet at this point. We don't know till he goes out there. That's what makes this Citrus Bowl that much more exciting than it was before the announcement came out that Joe Milton was done with college football.
Yeah, that is true. And I think my guess is you're going to see a massive spike in Tennessee interest because of this. I think we know that for a fact at this point. And I would be willing to venture that Citrus Bowl ticket sales, as we'll talk about later with playoff ticket sales, may be outpacing a certain playoff games ticket sales because of it.
Yeah, this came up on the 3:45 a.m. production meeting, and I'm still not 100% sure that I believe it. I still want to hear it. I need some time for Caleb to lay it out for me. So that's what we're going to do. Today on the program, we look forward to, as always, giving you a breakdown of the upcoming weekend of sports action. And then you've got Caleb, who's not giving you picks, but he gets those 5 balls and Hawkeyes to watch. And that's brought to you today by our friends at Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Haun. It's on offthehooksports.com. 5 balls and Hawkeyes to watch. Now, this list would have been much different if it came out on Monday instead of Friday, because I'm imagining that Nico is on the 5 balls to watch list that's on Off the Hook Sports right now.
Yeah, that I don't think I need to leave anybody in suspense. That's a pretty obvious one. So yes, Nico is absolutely on it. If you are we diving into that now? Because we can go through it all. But yes, I'm not going to hide the fact that Nico Iamaleava is on the list.
Let's do this first because we knew Nico would be on it. So let me get your Hawkeyes to watch, because then we can kind of fill in the blanks with your balls to watch, because obviously our listenership is going to be much more well educated on that. As I remind you that portions of the program are brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Haun. I had my LASIK surgery there. No cataracts. They took care of me. You'll absolutely love it. Local vision protection right there in the Knoxville area. Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Haun. ccteyes.com. ccteyes.com. So who are the 5 names that I need to know that are on Iowa's roster so I can sit down with my buddies and look pretty smart? Because I don't know about you, but I haven't seen a lot of Iowa this year.
So just to give you guys a quick breakdown of them, Iowa has a backup quarterback in Deacon Hill. Mm-hmm. Their top go-to receiver was a tight end in Eric Gall, by the way. He's had 299 receiving yards this year, but he's been out since week 8, and he's still their top receiver. So he's out. And so there's nobody on offense to watch for. Just don't even look at the offense. Okay, so number 5, believe it or not, is the nation's all-time career leader in punt yards, Dave. Torrey Taylor.
Yes.
And Iowa wins with I was hesitant on this because I don't think for Heupel's offense field position matters, but for Iowa to score, field position does matter. So their punter is on there.
And I believe he knows the Tennessee guy too, the Tennessee punter. They're like buddies, and I believe he's ambidextrous there, which means he can breathe underwater and above water.
Makes you can punt both ways. All right, so
that told to me, but I think that he can kick with both feet. I think that's going to be commonplace. I think Tennessee's on the front end of it, where you'll look back and say, "Oh, he could kick with 2 feet, no big deal." I think that's the way
I
it's going
said
to
for
be.
a while, and y'all know how much I despise punting in football, so how much I devalue punters. But I said for a while that if you're going to go for punters, I don't understand why colleges for the longest haven't gone to South America or Australia or like some rugby league and just like say, "Hey, want a scholarship to go to college in the States?" and given it to them there. I just never understood why they haven't done that yet.
You know what the skateboarding kids call you if you're left footed instead of right footed. You know what it is, right?
What?
Wanky.
Oh,
That's what the kids call you because you're off center. Okay, all right. Now, who else do we need to keep an eye on that is going to be a factor from Iowa?
So funny enough, special teams, Cooper DeJean would have been the top player, but he's out, so he's not playing. So everybody else is on defense. So Jay Higgins is the linebacker. He's the leader in tackles and everything like that. Nick Jackson deserves a shout out as the other linebacker, but Jay Higgins is the guy that makes it all go. Edge rushers, Deontay Craig, Ethan Hurkett are both valuable, but Joe Evans is the most important edge rusher. He's got 9.5 tackles for a loss, 5.5 sacks. Now, no defensive backs are important because I think what Iowa does, Dave, they play a 4-2-5 and they just drop every defensive back, and they're like, just don't let everything be in front of you. There's no real value to them. However, they have a position in the 4-2-5 called the cash position, which is a hybrid linebacker / defensive back. And that guy is Sebastian Castro. And he leads the team in interceptions with 3. He's got a defensive touchdown, 61 tackles, 41 solo, 8 tackles for a loss, a sack, and 8 pass breakups. So he really does do everything. And then up front, this is where Tennessee's really going to be tested because, as we know, they like to run the ball. And how can they run it in the interior? It's going to be Iowa's interior defensive line. Yaya Black and Logan Lee, the 2 defensive tackles. I've got Black on there at number 1, but you could really interchange them. They're really kind of a duo. Black is the bigger star to a certain degree. I think he has more NFL potential. But I think, again, he's just watch out for the defensive tackles in general. Without Javonte Spraggins in particular, how will Cooper Mays handle them is a big question.
Well, and the other question when we get into the box is I'm going to ask you, and you start telling me about their linebackers, their ability to cover it. Are they going to be able to do that against? There's not a blazer on the team in Jacob Warren or McAllen Castles, but there's a couple of very good route runners and guys that can beat you with their athletic ability if you allow them to. So your thoughts on the second level pass coverage from the Hawkeyes?
So Iowa's philosophy is they play a 4-2-5 and they stop the run and they play very soft in the secondary. And here's what they believe. And I know this because I'm a Titans fan and the Titans actually played this for a while. They leave the 3 to 8 yard routes wide open over the middle. They let you have them. Their belief is that if you have to go down the field with 3 to 8 yard routes, eventually you'll get impatient and make a mistake if you have to run that many plays.
Sure.
It's the old, and you know this, Dave. It's what you told me. It basically was John Chavis' philosophy against Spurrier, wasn't it? In the end, it was if we make Spurrier work the field, he's going to get impatient at some point and make a mistake. And
that's exactly what he did. I mean, that's what happened when it seemed like Spurrier maybe was losing a step. I thought that it was John Chavis and some other defensive coordinators that lightened up on him a little bit in that they just took away what they did really well and made them nickel and dime them. And I think it's a big part of the reason that Steve Spurrier retired early.
Yeah, I think from Florida, you're right. And then he went to South Carolina, and to his credit, he totally changed up his philosophy at South Carolina. But you're right, he wasn't the same SEC dominant coach at the time. And so I think that's Iowa's philosophy. Now, I will say this, and before we get to Tennessee, I know what we've been critical. I know, well, you have. I know you've been critical in certain elements of Josh Heupel's play calling. I've never seen him get impatient, though. Have you? Like, I've never seen him get impatient. He's like, if you make me work the middle of the field, then I'll work the middle of the field. That's fine.
I thought Florida, he got flustered.
I thought he stuck to the run in Florida in the second half the whole time. I didn't see him get too desperate.
I thought he got flustered because he didn't have Cooper. I think he got flustered, but you and I differ on this because you like your analytics. But I think when you punt on your own end and you have the lead, that to me is you're saying to yourself, they're better. So they're going to come back. So I got to.
They were better. I mean,
Agreed.
that's what I.
No, he was right. So I think he was trying to make something happen. So whether you define that as flustered or the right move, either way, then it was out of character. I would say that.
Do you think that? See, again, Iowa would have to score enough to get the game out of hand like Florida did. I don't think he's going to get flustered against Iowa. I think Josh Heupel seems. Didn't Clemson leave the middle of the field open all last year? And Heupel was like, "Fine, I'll take the middle of the field the whole time."
Well, and it's funny too. Is I'm the one that said flustered, but really it's not. I mean, if you're outscoring somebody by that many points, then they're the ones getting flustered. So I think it just depends on how the game's shaking out. I think you don't want to have the score run up on you because the game is moving fast. But by the same token, I think sometimes that some teams get a little frustrated by Tennessee slowing the tempo and that they want to get everybody to the line. Portions of the program brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry. What about the Fire Opals, a Tennessee tradition? RickTerryJewelry.com, RickTerryJewelry.com. And as we look at the 5 key players for Tennessee, if this list comes out Tuesday at 10 a.m., it doesn't have the Nico guy on it, but he's number 1, I'm assuming, on this list for you. And who are the Tennessee players that will play a huge factor in the Citrus Bowl against Iowa?
All right, so number 5, believe it or not, again, I'm going with the punter, Jackson Ross. Jackson Ross is a freshman all-SEC guy, and here's why, Dave. And this is a big deal. Iowa is dead last in yards in offense this year. They have the worst offense in football. If you pin Iowa deep, they're not scoring. That's just it's just that simple. If you pin them deep, they're not scoring. So
wait,
that's why.
If you pin them shallow, they're not scoring. You could average 3 yards per punt, and there's a good chance they're not scoring.
Yeah, but again, if an offense is this bad, a good punter can help you take total control of the game. So
I'm just trying to imagine it now. The play-by-play guy going, they really had Iowa in a tough position when they had the ball at the 38, but now they've got Iowa at the 41. That's practically no man's land. There's no way the Hawkeyes are going to be able to get back to the end zone there, Bob.
Oh my gosh,
that's a long way. Like
you're suggesting the Red Boyu offense from Waterboy when he kneels it 3 times and punts it in the start of the second half, and he's like, "How you like my new offense?"
A little. I don't think that's the worst idea. I'm telling you, I think I'm not the one that thinks this by myself. I think Tennessee's going to go out there and cruise with Nico.
Oh, I think so too.
I'm not the only one saying that. I'm not the only one saying that, maybe with some ties to the university within
All right,
practice.
so moving on, I actually have Ricky Gibson coming in at cornerback because you and Jimmy both talked about no matter how bad an offense is, there's always a deep play. With all the secondary turmoil, Ricky Gibson's going to be the new guy that we know is starting at cornerback. So I think we're all going to kind of be interested in how he plays, right, in his new role at cornerback. So
yes,
it's not really a test for him because he's not guarding anybody worth guarding, but it's a chance for him to look good. And now we're hearing about Ricky Gibson instead of Jordan Matthews. So it kind of makes you wonder, those guys can supplant each other going back and forth. But, 3 months ago, we were talking about more Matthews than Gibson. Now we're talking about Gibson more than Matthews, but he may be the next out on your list. No, he's not actually, because you're right. We haven't heard enough about him. And so I went one cornerback. The next guy on my list is a known commodity, and he goes by the name of Squirrel White. And the reason I put Squirrel White in there is because, like I talked about, if you're forced to work the 3 to 8 yard routes, there's Jacob Warren, McCall, Castles who can help with that. But a big help for that is Squirrel White over the middle in the slot, right? I mean, if you get him the ball at like a 5 yard pass hitch over the middle, he could turn that into a big gain, even if Iowa closes in well in the secondary. So this is a big chance for him.
Oh, when we talk about injuries, we talk about Brew McCoy into this offense, how it affected the offense. We talk about Cooper Mays, how it affected the offense and how it affected the passing game. And in both of those situations, I think the Cooper Mays situation affected the running game and the passing game, and Brew McCoy affected their physicality on the screen games. Plus, he affected a guy that could go down and get open against most anybody. So this is very secondary compared to those factors. But Caleb, somewhere lost in that was Squirrel White's development, right? Because he's not seeing the type of coverage that he thought he was going to see all year long once Brew McCoy suffered that injury.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It was not he wasn't going to have the same chances with Brew McCoy drawing people away. Iowa draws away anyway, just by their very defensive scheme they draw away. So if you keep an eye on, like I said, Sebastian Castro, then you should be okay. Number two, he was arrested, but the charges have been dropped, just so people know. So James Pierce Jr., I have in there at number 2. For those who don't know, Iowa's 2 losses this year, both times they gave up 4 sacks and they were strip sacked twice. I'm predicting a strip sack from James Pierce in this game.
Does he definitely just play, or do you sit him?
I think Josh Heupel's going to play him. Have you heard any reports that he's sitting?
Well, no. Here my thinking. Here's my thinking, and we might get into this at some point with our good friend T. Scott Banks. I'll look at this situation with Banks and Jones, and it just, to me, I mean, you do what the cops tell you to do. Am I being too easy there? Couldn't he just do that? And this isn't a situation.
Yeah, I agree. I think, look, me personally, just for publicity purposes, you could sit him, because honestly, I think Joshua Josephs could have fun against this Iowa offense himself. I think if James Pierce was sitting, I would have Joshua Josephs on at number 2, and I would predict him to get a strip sack in this game.
Yeah, I'd probably sitting. That's just me. Show represented by Banks and Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. He was cool enough to come on with us and give us a breakdown of with Florida State trying to get out of that conference, and it's tough. What else as far as factors for the Vols in the upcoming Iowa game?
So the last thing, I just want to bring up, as you guys know, Nico's number 1, and here's the real test. This honestly, if Tennessee was playing Joe Milton, given what I learned about after studying their defense yesterday, there would be a concern, because by leaving the 3 to 8 yard hitch routes wide open, the key is touch on the ball, Dave. You got to have touch. And Nico, how much, and we know Milton struggled with that. How much touch does Nico have throwing over the middle? I think he's got a lot of touch. I saw enough to think he's got a lot of touch over the middle. But that's going to be the key. Does he have the touch on those 8 yard passes?
Agreed. Hit the like and subscribe button, guys. You've been around. You've known me long enough. I think you know that I'm not going to just say, "Hey, this guy's incredible. You're going to love it." Hit subscribe. No, just you're going to wait and watch him, and he's going to be that good. Then you're going to be like, "Oh, I'm going to hit that subscribe button for Dave because he told me that." He's going to be that good. Stay tuned with Caleb Calhoun and Dave Hooker. This is a presentation of Off Thug Sports. Coming up here momentarily, Fred White will join us. VFL look back at his recruitment and what this means for Tennessee to finally get Nico to be the guy to take the snap and take over as a new era in Tennessee football begins.
Got cataracts? We can fix that. Never miss another moment. With a little help from Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Haun at cctis.com.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
We believe every day is a good day to be thirsty. With free samples on draft and lots of flavors to choose from, Tennessee Cider Company prepares a hard cider that's easy to enjoy. Some say it's the signature cider of the South. Others say it's the cure to your craving. They all say you'll savor every sip. The area of Gatlinburg has so much to offer, and so does Tennessee Cider Company. Add us to your list for shopping and fun experiences. You'll be glad you made the trip. Find our cidery in the Mountain Mall on the Gatlinburg Parkway. Sip smart. Sip the good stuff. Sip Tennessee Cider Company. Thirsty yet? Doors open at 10 a.m.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
So I guess at the end of the show, we'll do our predictions. Is that what we're doing here?
Yeah, for the record, the reason I didn't do prop bets is the Citrus Bowl, they're not putting a lot of prop bets out right now.
Yes.
And this is something that we talked about yesterday. I think Vegas is very unsure of what to expect given the opt-outs and Nico playing now. And I just don't think they want to put a lot of prop bets out there right now.
I'm glad it wasn't a game time decision. Can we all say that? Wouldn't that have been horrible if everybody's just, they're half at Publix or they're doing whatever they're supposed to be doing, and then because they don't care about the start of the game, because they've seen Joe do this repeatedly, and Nico runs out there. So at least they get that out there, but it's just a strange situation. By the way, we'll have Jimmy Hahn's prediction on the Iowa Citrus Bowl here momentarily on Off the Hook Sports. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I wonder if Hypo was thinking that, and I wonder if some people, maybe the Danny Whites of the world, were like, hey, if you're starting Nico, you need to let it be known because that'll help us with our ticket sales. Like, I wonder if that's kind of where it happened. Because, look, as we talked a little bit about this yesterday, but Dave, there is no denying that filling a bowl stadium with your allotment is a huge benefit to you in so many different ways, isn't it, long term? It may be at a neutral site, but filling up your side, I think, helps a lot. Not showing up is a really bad look.
Yeah, it's a bad look. It's a bad look for the TV guys that are gonna, they're gonna argue your case next year. Oh, they should be in the Citrus Bowl instead of the Gator Bowl. So yes, it hurts you, but it seems like Tennessee has a good enough reputation that if they don't show up for one over the course of 8, 9, 10 years, that it's not going to be a situation in which you're like, oh man, you don't want that team because they're just not going to show up. There are other teams that's the case.
I mean, this is the sole reason that they got relegated to the Citrus Bowl in 2001, though, while Florida got to the Orange Bowl, because Tennessee fans did not bother to go to the Fiesta Bowl in '99. They didn't care. I mean, you had a group of, Dave, I would say you were more tied into the program than I was. I was a very young Tennessee fan at the time. I've turned in my fan card, turned it in like you have. I turned it in years ago, but there were a group of Tennessee fans, whether or not, that were very spoiled, that didn't know anything about the program before Philip Fulmer, that didn't know anything about the Johnny Majors era, and just thought that 13-0 and 11-1 was just par for the course. And when they went 9-2, they thought it was a disappointment, didn't they? Having no concept of where Tennessee had been in the past.
True, but that's the case really at any fan base, right?
No, because that Fiesta Bowl was against Nebraska, a Nebraska program that had won 3 national titles in 4 years, and their fans showed up for the Fiesta Bowl.
Well, but I bet you could go to the average fan on campus who they wear an Alabama something because they got one for Christmas, and they're on campus and they're walking around and they look just adorable. And if you ask them who the head football coach was before Nick Saban, they wouldn't know.
Oh, that is Alabama fans galore. They are so annoying with that. It's the same way. It's
everybody, right? I mean,
I had same with Laker fans, by the way. If you're a Laker fan and you don't know who Nick Young is, then you're not a Laker fan.
Okay, I had somebody give me the look like they were younger than us, and it was was it the Lane Kiffin coached at Tennessee look for a second? You could tell that 10 years ago was enough time where they had to think about it. And they were in their 20s, so I'm defending them.
It's excusable if you are a child like I was when I was 11. But if you're a fan, like if you are a true fan, by the time you're in college, guys, there's this thing called Wikipedia. There's this thing called YouTube. You should go look up your school's history and you should know about your program's history. I'm just saying that. Like, there is this thing. You know, you did not watch Tennessee in the 1960s, Dave, but you know who Dewey Warren is. You know who Doug Dickey is.
I do.
Like,
I do.
You all know who General Nealon is. None of us watched Tennessee during General Nealon.
No, no, you're right. And he always stayed cool, never too hot. Because of city heating and air conditioning, 50 years in East Tennessee, integrity matters. Don't trust a fly-by-night HVAC company to tell you that you need a new unit that could cost you thousands or more. cityheatandair.com, cityheatandair.com. So I believe we both know that Tennessee could have probably thrown the dice a little bit more in the portal. They decided not to do that, hold on to their guys that they wanted, let a couple of guys go that I don't think they were very high on, either from a playing standpoint or maybe a fit character standpoint. And that's where Tennessee is in the transfer portal. Is this a win for Tennessee, as we'll get hooked up with Fred White here momentarily? Or is this just a pass? Or is this one of those that Tennessee has to be ahead of the game and taking care of their people? So, hey, if you miss out on a Walter Nolan, you do, because you don't want to be in that bidding war, because then you could lose somebody like a Keenan Pilley that you don't want to lose.
Are we talking about just how Tennessee's transfer portal run a success in December?
Yep.
Yeah, it was a success. I think it was a very wide success, and they're not done either. So, because again, they returned who they needed, and then they went after who they needed. So, I think that's a big deal. And so, yeah, I think the transfer portal was definitely a success. Right now, they're targeting Texas A&M transfer wide receiver Evan Stewart in the portal. And so I think that's another point where I don't think they're done. And, you know, just to get to it, Dave, what do you think? What is Tennessee's wide receiver room going to look like? Evan Stewart is now a favorite to land at Texas A&M, and Nico Iamaleava is recruiting Brew McCoy to return.
You know, what's funny is I think that they went from having a 2 or 3 Chiefs. I really thought they had 2 or 3 Chiefs for a second, to because of Brew's injury, and he might be a Chief, but right now it just feels like they have kind of a bunch of followers. I don't know that they have a Chief. Does that make sense? I mean, I think Brew is going to be the guy that can dictate coverage, but I haven't seen that. And now he's injured. So, yeah, I don't know. They could have a bunch of just warriors. And if that's the case, I think you're going to have to wonder how Josh Heupel's offense can play at a really high level, 2 years ago level, if they don't have a guy that can take the lid off of it.
So let's assume that Evan Stewart commits as his favorite. And let's assume Brew McCoy comes back, which you say you believe is the case, right?
I'm not reporting it, but it seems like that would be the logical decision. Let's put it that way.
And let's assume everybody's healthy. Then you have Squirrel White, Dante Thornton, Brew McCoy, Chris Brazel, Mike Matthews, and Evan Stewart, and Braylon Staley. We know Hypo likes to run 3 guys. What's the rotation? What would be your prediction for the rotation, assuming Brew McCoy is fully healthy too?
Well, I mean, if it's Brew healthy, it's Squirrel slot, and just because I felt like there were a couple of times where other teammates put their arm around him and said, "No, let's slide you over here. This is a body language thing." Get the feeling they're going to try Dante on the outside as opposed to the inside, the other outside receiver. I get a weird feeling. Could be wrong. Could be totally wrong.
I could see that largely because Evan Stewart, for those first, you think Dante Thornton then would take over would win the job over Chris Brazel, the Tulane transfer wide receiver, the 6'5", 195
I don't want to be mean to Brazel. I don't want to be mean to Nimrod or Webb, but I do not see them as guys that you're going to be saying, "Hey, that guy's so good. I think we'll go to the mall and get we'll get a Webb jersey tomorrow." I don't think anybody's going to be doing that.
Okay, so why is Tennessee then going for Evan Stewart, and why is he favored to land at Tennessee? He's a 5'11", 170 guy. He's another slot guy. If Squirrel is already locked in at that spot, and they could move Thornton over, do you think Hyol wants to do a rotation in the slot going forward?
We could see, but I mean, but by the time he got on campus, I mean, that's another year. I mean, these guys, I think it's going to be pretty simple to learn that position. When we saw that with Jalen Hyatt, who is not a product of the system, but he was still very good because of the system. And I think if you put in your time and learn quickly at that position, you can have some pretty special things happen to you if you have that ability. Go to Sports Treasures, go to facebook.com, go to Sports Treasures TN, set up the follows, and you can learn so much more about the best sports memorabilia. They have those dailies. That is Sports Treasures. Again, Sports Treasures TN on Facebook. Yeah, but getting back to your point, when I look at this group, I think you really, really have to have Brew McCoy come back as wide receiver 1. If not, who is it? I think there's 5 realistic candidates, but none that are very strong.
Yeah, so Brew McCoy comes back. Okay, so Brew McCoy comes back as wide receiver 1. Again, Chris Brazel and Mike Matthews are very strong candidates to be wide receiver 1, but then there's Dante Thornton on the other side. But if you think it's Brew McCoy and Dante Thornton, then we are saying that Chris Brazel and Mike Matthews are both relegated to the bench, even though Mike Matthews was a 5-star and Chris Brazel was the freshman receiver of the year. Because Hyol doesn't go that deep at receiver.
Yeah, but I get the point that the Dante, if they do slide him outside, which they did just before he got injured, I get the feeling if that doesn't work, it's not like they're going to be tied to it long term. And it's going to be like, well, we tried.
All right, so I'm going to go out.
And at that point, you're probably at the bus stop.
I'm going to say something that I think is not going to make Tennessee fans happy, but I think it's concerning, Dave. Mm-hmm. And it goes to my point of Josh Hyol and talent evaluation. Everything about Josh Heupel's offense is the quarterback and the receivers, right? That is the nucleus of the offense. So he needs to have the right quarterback and the right receivers. We agree with that, right? Before anything else.
Yes.
I think Josh Hyol is because he's not a great because he's not a great talent evaluator and he wants to be sure. I think Tennessee is wasting NIL money on more receivers than they need when they could be upgrading elsewhere.
I believe they have. I believe, however, that I think that Josh Hyol is on the front end of a lot of these coaches that are learning you better keep your players in-house via NIL money if you have those issues, and Tennessee did. So I would have agreed with you a lot more a month ago, maybe 2 months ago. But right now, I'm going to disagree slightly because I think he has seen the totality of the team. If you look at the guys that he brought back, am I wrong on that? Let me ask you. But first, let me tell people that you can go to tncidercompany.com, use the promo code HAT to receive some free swag with any cider order. That's free swag with any cider order. Use the promo code HAT. That's HAT. tncidercompany.com. Am I wrong in saying that, Caleb?
I believe you're partially wrong because yes, the NIL money was properly used to return players, but it's very clear Tennessee had NIL money to go out and grab new talent, obviously, because they have. And it just seems like they're applying that NIL money to one position, which is receiver, because Chris Brazel committed, even though Mike Matthews was there, and it sounds like they're trying to get Brew McCoy back. And now they're a favorite to land Evan Stewart, even though they have Squirrel White. Why are they spending this much? The only way we can say this now, I know it's not public knowledge how the money's being spent. It should be. This is a big thing. I think it should just be out there how much is being spent to buy players like free agency. But we can imply at this point that if Evan Stewart is a favorite to land at Tennessee from Texas A&M and Chris Brazzell committed to Tennessee from Tulane, that Tennessee spending money on NIL on receivers in the transfer portal. That is a safe bet. Why are they doing it on receivers and not defensive backs if they're looking to upgrade? I don't think they need to upgrade receiver that much for next year.
No, assuming Brew McCoy is 100% healthy. I just can't let you off the hook with that, because I think he's the guy who makes the room different. So I'm not sidestepping your question. If you're asking me if Brew McCoy calls and I go, let me check the bat phone, and it's, hey Brew, how are you? And he says, hey Dave, I just want to let you know that I'm going to go ahead and go pro. I'd be like, okay, well, I got to tell Caleb that. And then I'd hang up the phone. And then I'd say, I want to change my mind on what I just said. Because then I think Tennessee has an average group of receivers. I think they have the guy that everybody can support and be an A-plus group. But without that guy, they're very C to C plushes to me.
Really? You think with 5-star Mike Matthews and Tulane transfer Chris Brazzell and Squirrel White in the slot that they're that way?
Well, but you know me with freshmen and transfers. Let me at least see them in a game. I could change my mind in a heartbeat. What?
Brew was a transfer.
I know, and I changed my mind in a heartbeat. I actually changed it before he played because everybody told me he was a great person and they were blown away by him. So actually, I changed my mind before the season even started. But for the most part, like, give me time on the new guys and the transfers.
But then why are they opening up the checkbook? Why is Evan Stewart, a slot receiver, why are they opening up the checkbook for him? They have Squirrel White. They have Dante Thornton, who they can move into the slot. They've got Braylon Staley, who just committed. Why are they wasting money on a Texas A&M transfer in the slot?
Okay. I specifically thought of you and this young man over Christmas. This feels like to me, and you don't have the kids that run around like crazy and they've got to open everything and they've got to look at everything and they open things that aren't even their presence. This is to go to Vladimir Putin and they would think it was theirs and they would open it, and that's what they do. They open things. So I was thinking the other day, what if the number's off by just a little bit? They're still going to keep it, and then they'll go back to the litigation table if they feel like they need to. And you know what's going to happen? I'm a bad dad if I don't up it and buy them the software upgrade so that they can have that same thing that I signed them on to play football for that given year. Now I have to give them more because they're better. That to me is something that has not even close to being worked out nor discussed.
You're talking about, but that's paying more to keep the players you have.
Well, I think if you go get a guy like, let's say Dante Thornton, he should have a 2 or 3 year contract where he can't come back to you and say, hey, forget about that season last year where I caught 16 balls. I caught 62 this year. I want to get paid again. You see what I'm saying?
Right. But then my thing is, why are they trying to add Evan Stewart? What is the point? You have Dante Thornton and Squirrel White in the slot, and you have you and I both agree, there's a massive issue in the secondary. Why are you wasting NIL money on another slot receiver? If he hasn't committed yet, guys, for those questions, he has not committed to Tennessee, but he posted a TikTok last night of him at Neyland, and every analyst is predicting Evan Stewart will land at Tennessee from Texas A&M. Why are you targeting a Texas A&M transfer slot receiver as opposed to using that NIL money to get a couple of elite defensive backs?
My guess is that you've said this before. You take the best player that is on the board, and they think he's the best player on the board.
In recruiting, not in the transfer portal.
I thought we determined from our standpoint they were all the same. Do we not believe that anymore?
Do we not believe that transfers were all the same?
No. Just for recruiting.
Oh, transfer. No, they're not the same. You recruit for talent. You recruit for now. When you rank the classes every year, yes, they're all the same. But when you recruit 4-year guys for talent. We agreed with that. You should always recruit for talent. But the transfer portal is like free agency. You address needs in the transfer portal. That's what you do there. And it's like, and so again, Tennessee has a major question in the secondary right now. And they're out spending money on another receiver that they don't need. And again, I'm just assuming this. We have no proof they're spending money. But guys, if Tennessee's a favorite to land Evan Stewart, we can safely assume that means they're opening up an NIL offer for him, right, Dave?
Yes. Okay. There's some people out there that are listening because they work in a corporate environment, and they're going to say, Dave knows exactly what he's talking about. There are others like me. They're going to say, this is some of the stupidest rules in the history of man. They have to go out there and spend what they're allocated. If they came back to the Spire Group and said, man, that was a heck of a class. We really raked them in there. We only spent $900,000 instead of $1 million. So here's your $100,000 back. Well, that budget next year is going to be $900,000. It's not going to be $1 million anymore. And so I think you have to spend that money. So if you look at it and you're like, oh man, that Caleb guy off the hook, he's right, but we can't get a guy that's very good with that extra $100,000 we have laying around. So let's just get a guy who's a good fit. That's how I think stuff like that is playing out in the very end of the decision making of the transfer portal. That's why I don't think it's a good fit, but I think they've got a little bit of money burning a hole in their pocket. Those are my thoughts.
Wow, that's it. So you think they're like, hey, I mean, and I could see that because even though Tennessee's loaded at slot, I guess if you're a slot receiver, even if you have competition, playing in the Tennessee system is so alluring to you at that point. Yeah. So
I think they look at it and they say, we can't get Caleb the quarterback because of Nico. We can't get John the wide receiver because of all the receivers we have. But maybe we can get Calhoun the offensive guard.
But the problem is that's my issue, though, is like they're going for a receiver. They shouldn't be able to get a receiver. They should be already loaded at receiver.
I agree. They should have already spent the money. I think that this probably happens at all schools. I think they'd probably rather not be out because it makes it sound like they didn't spend the money in the right direction, doesn't it?
They shouldn't have. Let me just say this, and this is going to be controversial. They shouldn't have paid for Chris Brazel, and they shouldn't be paying for Evan Stewart, and they should have corralled all that money to go get a transcendent safety.
Or a guy named, I don't know, Seaton.
I don't think you pay that much for a freshman offensive lineman recruiting if you're all in on next year. I think you go for a safety. Dave, what is the only thing holding Tennessee back next year? It's the secondary, right? That is the only question we have about this team if they're fully healthy.
Yeah. It definitely makes you wonder if Tennessee likes many of the defensive backs because they showed last year when they did like them, they would go after them. So hang tight for us. We want to talk about some of those names. Also, we're working to connect with the one, the only Fred White, BFL. Hopefully we'll be joined by him. And then why I'm already sensing the difference on social media. Tennessee fans are excited to see Nico, and I can't blame you. 2 minutes off the Hook Sports.
Got cataracts? We can fix that. Never miss another moment. With a little help from Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Haun at ccti's.com.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air. Dare to compare.
We believe every day is a good day to be thirsty. With free samples on draft and lots of flavors to choose from, Tennessee Cider Company prepares a hard cider that's easy to enjoy. Some say it's the signature cider of the South. Others say it's the cure to your craving. They all say you'll savor every sip. The area of Gatlinburg has so much to offer, and so does Tennessee Cider Company. Add us to your list for shopping and fun experiences. You'll be glad you made the trip. Find our cidery in the Mountain Mall on the Gatlinburg Parkway. Sip smart. Sip the good stuff. Sip Tennessee Cider Company. Thirsty yet? Doors open at 10 a.m.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Did you think when Florida State said, hey, we might just sit this one out, that they might actually do it at any point in time, the bowl game? Did you think that might be a possibility?
I thought it could be. I think the only reason they didn't, and I'm just going to be honest with you, the biggest reason they didn't is that they would look like they were running. Because I'm just going to tell you guys this. And I'm shameless plug, my SEC bias history video last week. For those who don't know, and Dave, you know this, people complain about SEC bias icing out other teams. But the funny thing is, it's always been the SEC that's fought for playoff expansion, hasn't it? It's always been the SEC that's fought for more teams to get in.
Yes.
And my theory is this. The reason other conferences have fought against expanding the playoff is it's much easier for them to get left out and complain about bias towards the SEC rather than actually have to play a game and get blown out by the SEC. And that's always my biggest example of that. Remember 2011 when Alabama got in over Oklahoma State to play LSU for the rematch?
Yes.
Don't you think Oklahoma State was secretly happy about that? Wouldn't they rather complain than have to play LSU? What do you think would have happened had they played LSU in that game?
Oh, I didn't think either one of those teams wanted to play LSU.
Yeah, but Alabama was obviously going to. Alabama beat LSU, so they were obviously going to give a better game. What do you think would have happened had Oklahoma State played Alabama or LSU? It would have been an obvious blowout, right?
Yeah, no, that was completely my point. I didn't. I thought that was a pretty clear cut one too, right?
Right, but people were saying both teams were 11-1. Oklahoma State won their conference. Oklahoma State was whining and saying they should have gotten in, and then they got relegated to the Rose Bowl to play Stanford. I think Oklahoma State was super happy they got relegated to the Rose Bowl because had they gotten in over Alabama and played LSU, they would have lost by 40. And it wouldn't have even been a game. And anybody with eyes saw that. So I think the reason for the longest time, the reason the ACC, which is the reason Florida State's not in the playoff, because the ACC commissioner blocked playoff expansion. I think they blocked playoff expansion because, quite honestly, this was the reason. They wanted Florida State to be able to whine about not getting into the playoff rather than actually getting into the playoff and losing in a blowout.
I disagree completely. Travis says, I just don't think we are committed to having a top 20 defense. Listen, if we wanted to, we could have the absolute best media covering Tennessee rugby in all of sports broadcasting. Wouldn't be close. Me, Caleb, we'd just be all over those teams. We'd have sources like there was no tomorrow. But you can't do that, and then it comes down to how much publicity they're pulling in. So that's the question I have, Caleb. When you start talking about other players, how much publicity are they bringing in? And Travis says, I don't think we're committed to having a top 20 defense. I don't think they are. I think Tennessee would be fine having a top 20 to 25 defense. You?
I think they would love to have a top 20 to 25 defense. I don't think it's that they're not committed to it. Trust me. I mean, given what happened to Kamal Hadden 2 years ago against South Carolina, I think Tennessee is like, hey, man, if we just had a top 20 defense, we'd be in the college football playoff. That's what they're thinking from that. I think they're committed. I think it's a hard sell. I'll say this. If you talk about tripping over nickels for dollars, I think many athletes are smart enough to know that. And many secondary players at Tennessee know the system. Many secondary players know the Tennessee system. So if they're thinking about the NFL, they're like, playing at Tennessee is not going to make me look good for the NFL draft. I mean, that's a fact they have to accept, that you have to make a sacrifice that you're probably going to hurt. Even if you're really good, you could hurt your draft stock playing at Tennessee in the secondary.
So we discussed this yesterday, and I'm going to throw it out there to you, and it's definitely not a shot at any of these players. We're talking about elite players at Tennessee, but there is an interesting drop-off from some of the guys to some of the others, and it's brought to you by Harrell Group Security Solutions, leadership experience, specialization, addressing problems through unique mission-specific mitigation techniques, making your children safer one school at a time. HarrellGRP.com. So here's who we got on the board right now. Is we have a pretty darn good group. If you want to go through some of those guys, Caleb, because I'm having trouble pulling that up. But as far as some guys that have been able to do at the Tennessee level.
What group? What are we talking about?
Are we talking about your receivers group? Is what I'm trying to get to.
Oh, okay. Tennessee has they've added Chris Brazzell, Mike Matthews, Dante Thornton, Brew McCoy, and they have Brew McCoy return. So they added Chris Brazzell and Mike Matthews. They're targeting Evan Stewart. Brew McCoy they're trying to get to return. So yeah, they do have a pretty darn good group. But the question is, what's the rotation going to be like? Obviously, Squirrel White, and so we're just going to have to see what happens when Evan Stewart. We're just going to see what happens depending on what happens if Evan Stewart commits or not.
Well, the point I wanted to get on to that is, you said this year's Tennessee version of Joe Flacco stepped up during the middle of the season. I love the fact that you can trade players later now in the NFL than you could just 6, 7 years ago. I love the later trade deadline. So what would you define as a Joe Flacco style player?
So a Joe Flacco style player who watched the Cleveland Browns last night, he threw for over 300 yards. It's his fourth straight 300-yard game. He's got them as a favorite to go to the Super Bowl. Now, Joe Flacco stepped in midseason after being a free agent, not playing, and has just taken over for the Browns and has them rolling. The question I wanted to look back just for history for Tennessee, who is a player who stepped in, whether it be an injury or whatever, in the middle of the season and completely revitalized the program in a season? And put it this way. I don't want to say revitalized, but had a very strong finish that everybody could be proud of. And I came to a few, and the most obvious clear-cut Joe Flacco was Darryl Dickey in 1985. When Tony Robinson went down, Darryl Dickey came in, led them to an SEC championship, and then beat Miami in the Sugar Bowl, arguably Tennessee's greatest bowl game outside of the 98 national championship. But I think that's the most obvious.
I've got one that I think is really going to surprise you. Go ahead.
That was mine. Mine was Darryl Dickey.
Well, you also had Travis.
Oh, Henry, I got a few. Want me to?
Yeah, in 98.
Travis Henry, Travis Stevenson, 98. Yep. Stepping in for Jamal. And Josh Dobbs in 2014 after Justin Worley got hurt.
Yeah, I would say that I think the guy that stands out to me that was able to kind of step out in the middle of it would be Travis Stevens in 2001. Because did anybody really think that he was going to be able to lead Tennessee to anything special? I didn't.
Yeah, but with Travis Stevens though, he was considered the starting back going into the season. Now he was an underdog who stepped up, because I remember that year Tennessee was number 8, and I actually have old magazines, and the big thing with Tennessee that year was the only reason Tennessee's not top 5 is everybody was skeptical about their running game that year. They turned out to have the best running game. So Stevens was good, but he didn't step in because of an injury. Fulmer and Sanders, to their credit, they were all in on Travis Stevens in spring ball, weren't they? They were fully committed to him.
Well, they were, Caleb, but if you're going to include somebody that came in midway through an injury, don't you have to say Peyton Manning?
Yeah, Peyton Manning would be a good one. Peyton Manning would
But
be
he
a very
happens
good
so
one.
early, he doesn't feel
It
like
was
a injury
doesn't
feeling
feel like it.
midway through the year.
Yeah, exactly. Like when Peyton Manning came the starter, it was actually the same time when Jamal Lewis went down in '98. But it was like when Jamal Lewis went down, Tennessee had already played Syracuse and Florida. It just felt like they got the meat of their schedule already out of the way, didn't it? When Travis Henry and Travis Stevens came in.
Yeah, and you want to hear this too because I was at the game beforehand selling the little the program so you get 20 cents and get in, get a free ticket. And that was when Chuck Webb blew his ACL. And I remember where I was when it was announced that Reggie Cobb was going to be suspended. You had the sense Tennessee's running backs were so good. They'll find somebody else. Is that not insane to think how good those guys were? But you just had this feeling like, they'll be okay.
How did I forget him? Not Chuck Webb or Reggie Cobb, because you're right, those were amazing in '89, but 1990, how did I forget Tony Thompson? Middle of the season, Chuck Webb goes down. Oh, well, it was early, but still, like, Dave, I was young, I don't remember, but you might, like, so did it feel like Tony Thompson would easily step in for Chuck Webb? And because he wasn't as good as Chuck Webb, but he was very, very good.
No, I think he had 224 yards in his first game
against Mississippi State.
Subbing for those guys. Somebody check that for me. I could be wrong. I think I'm right on that. 2 minutes. Stay tuned. More after this as we'll talk a little bit more Nico because, man, that Citrus Bowl looks a little bit different. 2 minutes off the Hook Sports. Stay tuned.
Got cataracts? We can fix that. Never miss another moment. With a little help from Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Haun at ccti's.com.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
We believe every day is a good day to be thirsty. With free samples on draft and lots of flavors to choose from, Tennessee Cider Company prepares a hard cider that's easy to enjoy. Some say it's the signature cider of the South. Others say it's the cure to your craving. They all say you'll savor every sip. The area of Gatlinburg has so much to offer, and so does Tennessee Cider Company. Add us to your list for shopping and fun experiences. You'll be glad you made the trip. Find our cidery in the Mountain Mall on the Gatlinburg Parkway. Sip smart. Sip the good stuff. Sip Tennessee Cider Company. Thirsty yet? Doors open at 10 a.m.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
You're listening to The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
The internet is full of pictures of each and every one of you.
Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free.
Is there nothing you people can't do?
Also available on offthehooksports.com.
All right, Caleb, so set this up for me because sometimes it's odd for Joe Flacco to work his way in the conversation, but you mean it as an ultimate compliment. So this, while it confused me a little bit, is now what the H?
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
What is what the H when it comes to Joe Flacco and the Vols?
Well, yeah, it's like what we were talking about. It's Joe Flacco stepped in mid-season for the Browns and now has them on a run to maybe go to the Super Bowl. And it's who is a Tennessee player who stepped in mid-season. Now they had to at least have been on the roster, but that stepped in mid-season because of injuries or whatever and had a successful run. That's where I was at with. So that's why I was naming Travis Henry / Travis Stevens in '98, Daryl Dickey in 1985. And Josh Dobbs in 2014, and then yes, Tony Thompson in 1990.
Well, that's a great position to take, Caleb. But I could also take the position the guys that came back from the war. I'm talking about guys this year that had that sort of impact. I thought you were going to find one for me this year that had that sort. That get stepped in,
guys who came back from the war.
Stepped in and let's chill out. I got this.
Who stepped up for Tennessee mid-season in place of injury this year? Who?
You know the only one that did it.
Who?
Wasn't very good at it.
Elijah Herring.
No. And that's taking one for the team. I feel bad for him. I really do. He knows he can't play Mike.
Yeah, that's
I'm not being mean to that guy unless he's playing Mike in the middle of 2025 season.
That's like, okay, Elijah Herring stepped up the way Zach Wilson stepped up for the Jets this year. Okay. I mean, I'm sorry. Elijah Herring is Tennessee's Zach Wilson. And that I'm you know, as Stephen A. Smith once said, don't like to disrespect players, but sometimes you got to tell everybody the truth when someone can't play. And it's at least at Mike linebacker, Elijah Herring can't play. And, you know, so I can't go with Elijah Herring. I mean, I would say, I'll give you one who may actually, but in 2022, could we say Jalen Hyatt after Cedric Tillman went down? Jalen Hyatt was the starting slot receiver anyway, but would he have had the yards he had when Cedric Tillman got hurt?
If he would have been at Tennessee this year? Is that what you're talking about?
No. I'm saying in 2022, would Jalen Hyatt have done what he did had Cedric Tillman not gotten hurt?
I still think that he was going to be the open guy in retrospect. We both thought he was a product of the system. I don't think he was a product of the system. I think that'll prove itself out. It may not in 5 years, but I think it will. I think it will.
What about one you covered? Here's one. They became both elite together down the stretch, but what's forgotten is in 2001, before Dante Stallworth got hurt, Kelly Washington wasn't considered a feature receiver. And then Stallworth gets hurt. And then they start throwing Washington's way all the time. But then Stallworth comes back. Does Kelly Washington still become what he was if Stallworth doesn't get hurt in the middle of the 2001 season?
Probably not. Also talked Dante out of coming back for one more year. Said, take care of your parents. You got to take care of your parents. And then so Dante Stallworth had a dinner with an agent, and so technically he was bound and gone. Could have sat out 4 games the next year if you remember. If he wanted to come back, but that was when the NFL and the NCAA was pretty stupid. And even though the guy wanted to come back to college, you would have to sit 4 games. So he didn't get to do so. That's your NCAA memory of the day. Just remembering the less power they have, the better off we all are.
That's very true. It was just Washington was considered a rare talent. But let's be honest, Dave, when they were playing together, Dante Stallworth was better, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah. So they worked it out where Dante had the whole gear because he played baseball and he was way more developed. So that was a big factor in it as well. And what he needed, though, was a Dynasty pools and spas. Imagine having the best spas made right here in the U.S. in your backyard. Dynasty Pools and Spas has their showroom open in Athens with the best hot tubs and spas on the market. Delivery, they can do that. Complete support, spa cover, chemicals to keep your spa bubbling at its best. That's Dynasty Pools and Spas. Amazing discounts for first responders, military, and even some blemish models that can save you a ton and no one will ever notice. I'll tell you the best backup that Tennessee may have ever had to step in when guys were getting banged up because they were true freshmen or they had just gotten hurt for the season was Brandon Stewart and the whole Peyton Manning situation. It's a big point that a lot of people thought that Brandon Stewart should be the guy because he was a little bit tougher and could run. That was not, I mean, that you're a little bit younger than me. That was not a 90-10. It should be Peyton Manning. That was more like a 60-40. It should be Peyton Manning returning, not Brandon Stewart.
Yeah, and I've read articles. I believe Brandon Stewart's family was very upset and felt that Peyton Manning only got the nod because of his family. Well, now that turned out to not be true. Peyton Manning was obviously better, but Brandon Stewart was. Guys, y'all can hate me for saying this all day. Tennessee's not winning the 1998 national championship without Brandon Stewart, because Brandon Stewart was at Texas A&M, Dave, and Texas A&M upset Kansas State in the Big 12 title game. And I'm telling you guys right now, Tennessee was more talented than Texas A&M. Tennessee was more talented than Kansas State. They weren't going to beat Kansas State in the national title, though, because John Chavis, for the life of him, could not figure out the triple option. Who do you trust, Dave? Bill Snyder or John Chavis in a matter of coaching wits?
My substitute mail carrier. Between the three of those, I'm going with that guy.
Wait, Bill Snyder was a great coaching wits, though.
Yeah. But are they going to give me my mail? What are they supposed to do? Give me my mail or coach my football team?
Coach the football team. I'm saying Bill Snyder or John Chavis. In a matter of coaching wits, Bill Snyder's offense versus John Chavis's defense, you think John Chavis would have ever figured out the K-State triple option at that time?
No, that was not going to happen anytime soon. Let's talk some Sugar Bowl. So Sugar Bowl is supposed to be this thing that if you're me, that you say the Sugar Bowl is always special. It's like Tennessee and Alabama play specifically in their colors, which they don't anymore, and I know. But you play crimson and you play orange. It is the third Saturday in October. It is one of those special matchups. And I hate it when people say this, but take the record and throw it outside the window. Well, Tennessee appears to be, I think, and along with the rest of the SEC scene, one of those traditions plummet, just fall apart. Because if you couldn't make it to the college football playoff, most teams out of the SEC were happy with the Sugar Bowl. What are their ticket sales doing, Caleb Calhoun?
Well, Dave, this isn't just this is the college football playoff. This Sugar Bowl is a college football playoff game, and their ticket sales are plummeting. You can go. So according to SeatGeek, they opened for both college football playoff games. The Sugar Bowl has Texas and Washington. The Rose Bowl has Michigan and Alabama. Both ticket sales when the playoff was set started at about $900. The Rose Bowl between Michigan and Alabama has gone up to $1,000. The Sugar Bowl has plummeted to $600 according to SeatGeek. I'm on StubHub right now, Dave. You can get Sugar Bowl tickets. You can get tickets to a college football playoff game whose tickets open at $900 for $158 right now. That's a collapse.
Stunning. Okay. The good and the bad. The good is I think fans will be able to go. That's cool. Okay. Because there was the big issue of could you go to potentially 3 away games? Because it could turn out that way. So you can potentially go, which is good for the fans. But the thing that you have to remember is this is still a gamble. And Caleb, you're in TV deep. You know this probably better than I do. But I'm just telling you, when these cameras pan up and they see a quarter filled stand instead of a 80% stand, it doesn't look as good. And they won't like that. And they won't sell as much product because it will then affect the television ratings. You want to feel that excitement. That's why I'm sitting home, or I could go down the street and watch, 10-year-old plays football. See the big difference? Capturing something.
So it's a college football playoff game. So it's not going to look empty. The problem with the college football playoff game, it's a little bit higher standard, Dave. You want a filled up stadium. You need it sold out, not 3/4 of the way full. If there's even an empty seat in that stadium, like a regular bowl, an empty seat's fine. If there's an empty seat, that is bad optics for the college football playoff. And by the way, when they go to 12 teams, the negotiations are up in 2 years for the college football playoff. If you got an empty Sugar Bowl, not empty, but if you have an empty seat in the Sugar Bowl, that's huge. And here's the real kicker, Dave. Here's what's throwing me off about this. Texas probably has, if we talk about like largest, most loyal fans, like Texas is top 5, right?
Yes.
How far is Texas? Ain't that far from New Orleans. Why are they having trouble filling the stadium?
No, at the most, it's an 8-hour drive.
Yeah.
It's longer than you think. That's just Texas, but it's very doable.
So why are they having trouble filling the stadium? Now, you can maybe say Washington fans aren't scooping up the tickets. That's my obvious theory, and I'm sure that's your theory too, is that Washington just doesn't care to scoop up the tickets. Well, then if Washington's not scooping up the tickets, stop complaining to me on why the college football playoff is hyper-regional and why it should exclude Pac-12 and those northern teams. If they don't care about football, if they're not going to buy tickets to the game, then they don't deserve to. Then they don't deserve to have a program that plays at that level.
Okay, I'm going to throw this at you. I'm a man of middle class means. I don't do great, but I pay my bills. I save up a little bit of money. We get to take a trip or two. That's me, family, and the 2 kids. And I want to save up for this playoff thing because I'd rather see Tennessee play at a Virginia Tech location or whoever it may be, Clemson one day, any of those teams. I'd rather see them play on the road or play at a neutral site game. I'd rather see that, and I'd rather spend less money. The problem is if those type of people spend less money year to year to year, then that becomes a habit. And if they say, I'm not going to go to the first round game because Tennessee's going to win, right? They're going to be Iowa. I was not that good, right? You don't know. I was pretty good.
Yeah, well, so look, we can get into the overall philosophy if sports tickets are too expensive regarding inflation and wages not keeping up with cost of tickets in America. That's a societal issue, and I agree with you guys on that. It is a societal failure of what's happened the last 40 years. Fair. However, that's a different topic. It's bad for college football as a sport if they can't fill their playoff games while the NFL can sell Super Bowl tickets for the worst nosebleed seats for $2,000. Horrible. And so I get it on a principle. I think it's immoral. It's gross that these tickets, these sports are being reserved for the wealthiest of wealthy Americans. I mean, this is a country that just keeps protecting the wealthiest. And so that's more evidence. But that aside, college football, the entities themselves, college football, NFL, whatever, they have to keep up with their competitors. I don't expect college football to do as well as the Super Bowl. Never did. But if college football is, as you and I both believe, Dave, in an era where in the second inning of a rocket ship launching, it's a very bad look if a semifinal game can't fill a stadium for a tenth of the price of a Super Bowl ticket.
I'll be honest. I got scared. They got close to political, but Caleb brought it back. He was getting close to political. I was scared, but he brought it right back.
No, people were talking about on the side, like I just saw comments on the economy and things like that. And I agree with people on a principle. It's an issue. Working people have been struggling for a long time. Regular middle class people, you said middle class, Dave, it's getting harder and harder to enjoy some things like playoffs and stuff like that. However, all that being said, that is a topic for another day. The real topic, though, is why is college football not able to keep pace with the NFL? Not keep pace, but be relatively competitive price-wise with the NFL? If college football is in the second inning of a rocket ship taking off and it's the second most popular sport in America.
I think a lot of their rocket ships were built out of nostalgia and weren't nearly as comfortable when it comes to the game day experience. But that's a topic for another day.
That is a great point.
He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. We're going to do it. He's Caleb. I'm Dave. This has been